Welcome back to the 29th online episode of Peacetime, hosted every Sunday morning by Peace Point with myself, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, live streaming from Dhamma International Meditation Center in Azusa, California. Today's session will be about an hour and 10 minutes long and will consist of a 25-minute talk and 20 minutes of meditation, finishing up with 25 minutes of conclusion and news updates. Last time you saw me, we looked at the logic of karma. With the Dhamma talk today, we will continue with our exploration of living Buddhism with the topic of doing good that does you good. As usual, this session I would encourage you to send in any questions you have by emailing me at peacetime.questions@gmail.com so that I can have a shot at answering them next time round. Previously, I've dealt with the workings of karma in general, both in its positive and negative variants. This session deals exclusively with the positive side of karma. This session will emphasize ways Buddhists practice to accumulate merit rather than on the perceived meritorious outcomes. The reason why I call them not just good but meritorious is because they are well known to be things for generating something really important in our lives, which is like a positive energy. Sometimes it's called merit. For those of you who know the traditional language, it's called Punna or Bun, which means a pure energy which has a special effect on our lives. Some things in our life we think are under our control or are down to our choices. But some things in our life are beyond our control. So if a disaster comes, that's not under our control. If we fall ill, sometimes we trust the doctor is going to help us, but they cannot help us in every case. There is always something else hidden away behind the scenes, which is helping in the background. And even in the same situation, for the people who have got more of this special energy in their lives, trouble seems to pass them by, leaving them unscathed, whereas for other people, the trouble may be very serious for them. So this special thing called merit is important. It's not maybe in the forefront of our 7 habits for highly effective people, but it's certainly important for happiness beyond the effectiveness of our working lives. Before understanding the positive energy called merit, we need to backtrack and explain the special way Buddhists understand the word mind. What Buddhists refer to as the mind, in technical parlance, citta or vijnana, is considered to be the awareness or the attention rather than the brain or the nervous system, rather like a will-o'-the-wisp that normally inhabits a person's body. In its natural state, it takes the form of a clear sphere of diamond brightness. However, when polluted by defilements, the mind is reduced to dullness and weakened potential. When positive karma arises in the mind, it lights the mind up for a while. All dynamic things in the world have a fuel on which they feed. The mind, too, must have a food on which it can use to fuel its efficient activity. Buddhists believe this energy is positive karma, which is known in a technical sense as merit. The word merit or punya can sometimes be confusing because it alludes to being honored or recognized by an awarding body. However, all that is intended by the use of the term merit, in English language anyway, is that it is somehow deserved. A general Buddhist definition of merit is the result of doing a good deed. Merit arises spontaneously for those who do good deeds without needing a third party to award it. Like a stone thrown up in the air knows it must fall back to earth. Between the good deed and the returning result of the good karma, there needs to be a potential energy storable in the mind, which communicates the potency of an act of karma from one place in time to another. This link in the causal chain is merit. Merit can be compared to electricity, since it takes the form of something which cannot be directly seen or felt by the external senses. Similarly, electricity is evidenced by heat or light from the relevant appliance, although Under normal circumstances, the current running through the wires cannot be seen. Some people, however, for merit anyway, have the sense of a warm, fuzzy feeling inside them every time they do something good. In relation to the mind, merit has some special characteristics. It is distilled in the mind of a person who does a good deed, rather than coming to those around them, as soon as that good deed is completed. Once in the mind, the merit will stay there, sometimes even beyond the grave until it is used up. Merit in the mind has the effect of improving the quality of the mind and life, gradually accumulating according to the scriptural metaphor in the Dhamma part of verse 122 of raindrops that can eventually fill a large container. One should not think lightly of doing good, imagining a little will not affect me. Just as a water jar is filled up with falling drops of rain, so also the wise one is filled up with merit by accumulating it little by little. Merit is constantly used up by just going through life, and so, if not replenished, it can run out. The amount of merit accrued by a deed, like karma in general, depends not just on the extent of the deed, but also on the strength of intention, amount of effort, and the amount of gratitude or ingratitude of producing that action. Merit has the effect for the doer of attracting favorable circumstances on 4 levels: mind, personality, lifestyle, and society. The effects become apparent first on the level of the mind. That is the warm, fuzzy feeling I was talking about before, and thereafter gradually filters through onto the other levels I have mentioned. Science would attribute differences between newborn children to heredity. The scientific explanation would work out for some physical attributes, but it is hard to apply heredity to features like intelligence or lack of it. Buddhists, by contrast, believe the differences are attributable to a person's past merit. Buddhists would refer to this historic store of merit or old merit like a down payment brought into the present life and to which new merit is added by intentional, wholesome actions from birth onwards. There's an interesting allusion to a guy called Migara, who was a person who was using up their old merit without bothering to accumulate new merit, which is made in the Buddhist scriptures. The story goes that a certain supporter of the Buddha, who was a lady called Visakha, was married into a family of unbelievers. Her father-in-law, the Migara, who I mentioned before, one day when he was having his breakfast, he saw a monk on alms round, but instead of giving alms, he ignored the monk. He therefore got no merit from his interaction with the monk. As Visakha was not in a position to criticize her father-in-law's behavior, she merely muttered, "My father-in-law is eating stale fare," which was shorthand for saying her father-in-law was living off his past merits. If a person is not complacent about advantages brought to them by their old merit, they should add this to this new, fresh merits cultivated in the present lifetime. As for how Buddhists build on the good fortune they already have, the practicality of accumulating merit needs to be examined in detail. And we also need to take care when we're studying about merit, because it's not as simple as it appears on the surface. Some people assume that if they do something good, then they should immediately get some benefit coming back to them because of it. But this is a rather simplistic way of understanding how merit works. When I was based at a temple in Manchester in the UK, they started out at a rental property in a rundown area of the city. One temple supporter was very new to Buddhism, but did a lot to help to buy supplies in support of the temple. However, it turned out that one day when they were attending a ceremony in the temple, someone broke into their car and stole things out of their car. And unfortunately, this A supporter concluded that their merit was not working and became disheartened, because they didn't think they deserved to get their stuff stolen after having helped the temple so much. If they had just recently done something very good, why should such a bad thing happen to them? Because normally the results of giving things is that your belongings should be protected from anyone who wants to steal them. However, they were suffering from a simplistic view of merit, and we have to accept that the meritorious fruits, or lack of them, that come to us at any time might be a mixture of recent merits and also merits which we collected up a long time earlier. In this connection, I would like to tell you the much more extreme scriptural example of the untimely death of a temple supporter called Mahakala from the time of the Buddha. Every morning, Mahakala would bring food for the Buddha, and then, after he had delivered the food, he would make his way home. There was one day when he had just stepped outside the temple gates, and he was washing his face in a pool in front of the temple gates, and at that moment, a whole lot of the king's guard, in search of a thief, mistook him for that thief and beat him to death there and then. In fact, just being where he was washing his face, just nearby there was a bag of money which had been discarded by the real thief as he was making his escape, so that when the king's men saw the guy washing his face just next to where the bundle of coins had been hidden in the rushes, they assumed Mahakala was the thief and beat him to death. Many of the monks in the temple commented how unfair it was for Mahakala to be such a stalwart temple supporter but meet such a violent end. And overhearing the monks' conversation, the Buddha responded that what happened to this man is not fitting for his karma in the present lifetime, but it is fitting for his karma in a previous lifetime. The Buddha went on to reveal that in this man's past, there had been a lifetime when Mahakala had been a guard in a forest outpost. At that time, a couple had been traveling in the area and asked to stay the night at his forest outpost before continuing their journey. The wife of the couple was very attractive, and the guard coveted her. So, with unwholesome intention, the guard planted his own jewels in the husband's luggage, and then kicked up a big fuss saying, "Oh, my jewels have disappeared. Quickly search the whole place and let's see if we can find them." Of course, they turned up where he'd left them in the husband's luggage. The guard accused the husband of having stolen his jewels and had him executed for the crime. So that was why being put to death was appropriate not for Mahakala's karma in the present lifetime, but it was befitting for the bad karma he'd done in the lifetime before. So this is why we can't be simplistic in our understanding of how merit works, because for the most part, we have no idea what we have stored up from our past. Similarly, we cannot judge others because although we may have some idea of how merit works, we have no idea about what each person brings with them into the world, which for each person is not the same. Buddhism enumerates 10 major ways to accrue new merit, technically known as the Punya Kiriya Watu. And these can be found, if you want to look them up, in the Sumangala Vilasini and the Abhidhammata Sangaha commentaries. According to this categorization, I'm going to describe 10 ways to accrue merit, summarized into 3 broad categories: generosity, self-discipline, and mental cultivation, which are distinguished by different flavors of meritorious outcomes. Generosity usually emphasizes material prosperity in the future, precepts emphasize health and beauty in the future, and mental cultivation emphasizes wisdom. Before making a start, it's probably worth pointing out that just because I only mentioned 10 things that are good for us to do in our life, it doesn't mean that any of the other sort of conventionally good deeds, many other things that you probably already do in your life that didn't make it to the short list, do not accumulate wholesomeness. For example, being an upstanding citizen, paying your taxes, taking your vitamins, looking after your parents, doing chores around the house, and staying out of trouble. Just because you don't see those things mentioned in the Buddhist list of all the good deeds in life doesn't mean you shouldn't continue doing them. So please do carry on having ambition in life, working hard, and avoiding being a disappointment to everyone else in society. By way of explanation, I should say that the 10 things I'm going to talk about today are chosen because they are the most effective way of accumulating merit. All the other things you do in your lives are also important because they are like the foundations which allow you to have that free time and freedom and the choice available to you in life to cultivate the 10 merit accumulating practices in life. Because if you cannot stand on your own 2 feet, and if you're worrying about poverty and hardship and your life is a complete mess, then you can't really focus enough to do any of the good deeds I'm about to describe to you today. So, to come back to our 10 major merit accumulating activities, generosity practices include giving, humility towards those of high virtue, service, transfer of merit to others, and rejoicing in the merit of others. Self-discipline consists in keeping the precepts on various levels, and when we come to mental cultivation, the practices include meditation, listening to Dhamma sermons, giving a discourse on the Dharma, and straightening out one's views. It should be noticed that although some of the categories have the same names, the level of practice of virtues such as merits is less than for the practice on the level of the perfections that we will come to in a future session. So let's look at each of the 10 in turn. The first way of generating merit through generosity, or dana maya, is giving beneficial gifts to others. There are many different forms of giving, and although gifts can mean giving to the poor or needy to generate merit, more often gifts are offered to members of the monastic community of a temple. In practice, Buddhists typically like to make gifts of food, clothing, shelter, or medicine. The most basic act of generosity is the gift of something that is beneficial to the recipient, or vatutthana. But it should be noted that gifts of items such as, let's say, weapons or alcohol would not lead to merit being accrued, as they would not ultimately create benefit for the recipient. Merit is also generated by the gift of worldly knowledge, such as vocational knowledge, technically known as vidyatthana, or spiritual knowledge, or dhammatthana, and even of letting go of one's anger to be able to forgive a person, the merit of giving forgiveness, or apayatthana. In conclusion, there are 4 categories of giving: giving physical objects, giving worldly knowledge, giving spiritual knowledge, and forgiving others. And often it is the case that the last item on a Buddhist list is meant to be the most challenging one. And this is probably why even the Dalai Lama famously admitted he forgives, but he doesn't forget. The second way of cultivating generosity is humility towards those of high virtue, or apacayana maya. If a person, instead of finding fault with others, is both humble and respectful in a way that allows them to look for the good in every person they meet, that humility will lead them to accrue merit, because at the very least they will always see the world in a positive light, allowing them to remain in a pleasant mood all the day long. And in practice, in order to accrue merit, Buddhists express humility by bowing or saluting elders or spiritual exemplars. Paying respect to the Buddha or spiritual teachers often involves a shrine. On a superficial level, shrines might be regarded as nothing more than material culture. Indeed, bowing at a shrine is often misunderstood by non-Buddhists as being some sort of idolatry. However, research has recognized shrines in homes as sites of shared cultural memory, with the function of contextualizing religious narratives and bringing the sacred into the home. Although shrines are sometimes regarded as a gray area between the cultural and the religious, research I published back in 2018 shows that shrines are intimately linked with Buddhist religiosity. I found that 70% of Buddhists had a shrine at their home. Having a shrine seemed to make visits to the Buddhist temple less necessary, but having a shrine was linked positively with frequency of daily personal religious practice and bowing to parents. Shrine owners were generally more collectivist, polarized regarding their identity, and stricter about intoxicants. So, shrines seem to symbolize the practice of humility. The third way of cultivating generosity is service or volunteering, technically known as Mahāyāna. From the point of view of accumulating merit, service includes all volunteer activities where time and a helping hand is given towards a good, and by that I mean generally uncontroversial, cause. The fourth way of cultivating generosity is transfer of merit to others, or patithanamaya. In practice, transfer of merit for Buddhists usually occurs in the context of memorial rites for deceased relatives. Water is poured from a bottle into a bowl as a symbol of an outpouring of merit from a person who has recently done a good deed but wishes to share part of that merit for the benefit of a loved one who has already passed. By sharing merit, the total amount of merit increases rather than diminishes, like one candle being lit from another increases the total amount of brightness. The origin of dedicating merit in scriptures comes from an occasion related in the Dhammapada commentary, where a certain king called King Bimbisara asked the Buddha whether, if he were to make an offering, it would still be possible for deceased relatives to receive a share of the merit from their deed. The Buddha replied that it would be possible, and the next day when King Bimbisara offered a meal to the monks on behalf of the relatives of his who had been reborn as hungry ghosts or Beta, when the merit was dedicated, the hungry ghosts showed themselves transformed from nakedness to being clothed in divine raiment and leaving behind their hungry ghost existence to be reborn in a heavenly destination. The fifth and final way of cultivating generosity is rejoicing in the merit of others, technically known as pattanumojana maya. This sort of merit is accrued by those who, seeing someone else doing a good deed or receiving good fortune, congratulate them on this. Even if they are unable to contribute anything more to that person's good deed or achievement, by being supportive of rather than envious of that person, they will accrue a fraction of the merit already accrued by that other person. In practice, this magnanimity is expressed in Theravada communities by saying the word sadhu or equivalent to the doer of the good deed. Turning now to self-discipline, the only way of cultivating merit through self-discipline is by keeping the precepts or sila maya. Self-discipline is practiced in Buddhism by avoiding taking advantage of the weaknesses in others or oneself through physical or verbal actions. In practice, self-discipline is practiced by upholding at least 5 rules of training or sikkhapada, otherwise known as precepts or sila. The different levels of precept practice will be explained in my next session. Moving on to the way merit is generated through cultivating the mind now. The first way of accumulating merit through mental cultivation is by meditating or bhavanamaya. Cultivating the mind can include reading Dhamma books, chanting, and meditation itself. Meditation is an exercise for relaxing and internally focusing the mind, which will lead to the arising of inner radiance and distancing the mind from disturbance by anxiety, limiting its habitual wandering, bringing peace, and eventually self-knowledge. I will also give a more complete overview of how meditation is understood in Buddhism in a couple of sessions' time. The second way of accumulating merit through mental cultivation is by listening to Dharma sermons, or Dhamma savana. Dharma sermons, or more informally, Dhamma talks, would normally be encountered by a Buddhist when they attend activities at a temple or a meditation center. A monk or expert on a Buddhist subject would elaborate knowledge in a way that exemplifies Buddhist virtues, challenging the listener towards self-improvement rather than merely entertaining or informing them. These days, Buddhist talks are also available on Buddhist satellite channels, the internet, and physical audio media. This method of generating merits refers to the benefits accrued to the listener in the audience. The third way of accumulating merit through mental cultivation is by giving the discourse on the Dharma, or Dhamma Desanamaya. Just as a Dharma sermon generates merit for the listener, merit also accrues to the person able to explain and communicate Dharma in a way that inspires listeners. The mastery and steadfastness in the Dharma implied by the ability to speak well on the Dharma crystallizes merit on a still deeper level for the speaker. Giving a Dharma discourse doesn't always mean climbing into the pulpit or equivalent, but may include answering questions on the Dharma or giving pep talks to those experiencing suffering or difficulty in life. The fourth and final way of accumulating merit through mental cultivation is by straightening out one's views, or dittu jukamma. This final way of generating merit, and it being put in final place in the list, probably implies that it is the ideal end product of practicing the preceding 9 ways of cultivating merit, refers to the degree which a practitioner is able to straighten out false views and to move towards transcendental right view, which, according to the Apannaka Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, means valuing generosity, valuing welfare work, honoring those worthy of respect, acknowledging the karma retribution of action, acknowledging the reality of this world, acknowledging the reality of the next life, repaying a debt of gratitude to one's parents, acknowledging the existence of spontaneously arising beings, and acknowledging that enlightenment can be achieved by those who practice well. So now that we have the complete picture of possible ways to accumulate wholesomeness and merit for ourselves, before we go any further, let's take the opportunity to settle ourselves for 20 minutes of meditation. If you would like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself now as you listen to my guidance. So we start by settling ourselves down into a comfortable position for ourselves in our meditation. Closing our eyes very gently, closing them in much the same way we might close our eyes if we were going to go to sleep. And we slow ourselves down by taking a few deep breaths to ourselves, breathing in to the full extent of our lungs, and then breathing slowly and smoothly out again. Again, we breathe in the cool, refreshing air from around us. As we breathe out, we may feel that we're letting go of any previous worries or concerns that we've had. Each time we sit for meditation, we take a few moments to scan down through our body, making sure each and every muscle is relaxed as we go. We relax ourselves starting with the muscles of our forehead, releasing any tension in the muscles there, before moving slowly on down to relax the muscles of our eyebrows and eyelids. Even the way we close our eyes should be as gentle as possible. We allow the muscles of our face to become soft, taking care that we're not gritting our teeth together. And that our jaw is also relaxed. We move on down, relaxing the muscles of our neck. If our shoulders are tense at all, we allow them to drop to their natural height. Before relaxing the muscles of our arms, our forearms, our hands and fingers. So that as our hands rest in our lap, they seem to do so almost weightlessly. Then we continue by relaxing all the muscles of our torso, our chest, trunk and abdomen. Taking special care that our stomach isn't at all tense. For relaxing the muscles of our legs, all the way down to our feet and our toes. Till eventually all the way from the top of our head, right the way down to the tips of our toes, we'd be fairly satisfied that there's no remaining part of our body with any sort of stress or tension anymore. Having relaxed our body, we should find that we're left with a feeling as if it seems to have melted away into the atmosphere around us, leaving no more worries about our body anymore, in a way that we can turn our attention inward. To the feeling on the inside, a feeling of warmth and well-being, a feeling of inner peace. This inner feeling, by any other name, we could call our state of mind. And it's something which can also be relaxed further in preparation for the meditation ahead. But the way we tend to relax the mind is by letting go of all the normal things we tend to worry about in our lives. Whether it be thoughts of work, friends, families, or studies. Regrets about the past. Or speculations about the future. if we are able to shed all these possible sources of chatter in the mind, before long we find our attention settling back into the moment, into the present time, and on the task in hand. Reminding ourselves that we have nowhere to go and nothing to do. Meditation is what we're actually here for. And we are able to bring our attention back from 1,000 different things in the outside world to a place on the inside, which is almost like a bunker, a place of shelter or a refuge from all the unpleasantness of the outside world, a safe haven for the mind. And if we can bring the mind back in its entirety, it's as if we have a certain distance from the external happenings in our lives, but with that also a sense of freedom for the mind, lightness, a sense of the mind being self-sufficient somehow in its own happiness. If we're able to engage with this more and more on the inside, before too long we'll have the feeling as if the same sense of joy and happiness, starting from a single place on the inside, will start to fill the whole of our body and mind in a way that leaves no space in the mind for any other sort of thought. And when we feel refreshed and relaxed, both in body and in mind, very gently, using no effort at all, we imagine that inside our body is just an empty space, a hollow cavity without any organs or tissues, muscles or bones. Inside this empty space of our body, somewhere in the area of our abdomen, we remember that picture of the bright, shining sun, which we imagined a few moments ago. But this time, instead of being in the sky, the picture of the sun appears in miniature, shining at the center of our body, shining with a cool, clear light, a light with a softness similar to that of the moon, more than of the sun itself. We don't worry too much about whether the actual picture of the sun is very clear or not. Even if it's vague, we accept it anyway. In this way, we allow the picture of the sun to become clearer on its own and in its own time. If we should find that our attention wanders off onto other things each time we realize, we simply bring our attention back again to that picture on the inside as before. If it wanders, we bring it back. And each time we bring it back, it should become a little bit easier to keep it there the next time round. As for the possible problem of there being thoughts in the mind, for some people who are not so troubled by thoughts, it is sometimes possible simply to ignore the thoughts and avoid giving them even the time of day, in which case they tend to die down by themselves. However, for those who are new to meditation, or who find that there are so many thoughts in the mind that it's hard to know where to even start ignoring them, it may be better just to start with the use of a mantra, hearing the sound of those words coming up from the center of your bright object, with the words Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, over and over again, lightly, gently and continuously, helping to lead the mind deeper at the center, while freeing the mind of any interrupting thoughts. The two things help one another hand in hand. The bright object that we've imagined and the sound of the mantra, helping the mind to stay for longer and longer periods of time in the center. If the picture changes, we follow it in its new form. There's no need to change it back again. If the picture disappears, you can think of a new one. Otherwise, we simply follow the way the inner experience in the mind evolves, observing without a mental commentary, without judging our own experiences, without getting excited by new things that happen in the mind, and not becoming frustrated if there seems to be no change. Sounds around us distract us, we simply bring our attention back. If we're uncomfortable, we can move, but doing so gently in a way that we don't disturb the stillness we've built up in our mind. We cultivate our attention in this way, lightly and gently, for a few more moments now in silence until we come to the appropriate time. Don't forget if your mind wanders anywhere else. No matter whether it be to the sounds around you, sensations in your body, or thoughts in your head. As soon as you realize, always bring your mind back again to the center of the body as before. Keep our mind always at the center of the body the whole the time. The center of whatever inner experience we have attained for ourselves. Whether it be a feeling of stillness inside, brightness inside, sphere inside, inner bodies inside, or Buddha image inside ourselves. Place our mind gently at the center of whatever inner experience we have achieved, and allowing our mind to come to a standstill at that point. We gradually make a wish at our center, at all the merit coming to us from our meditation to straighten out our views, calm our mind. May all this merit come together as a clear sphere of merit in our center, helping to attract into our lives all the very best of things, opportunities and people, while helping to protect us from all dangers, leading us to success in our lives, whether it be family or business, giving us the encouragement we need to do goodness throughout our lives, whether it be studying hard as a child, working hard as an adult, educating our family to know the difference between good and evil. Make a wish on the basis of this merit for the last few moments of our meditation. Sappa Buddha Nupavena, Sappa Dhamma Nupavena, Sappa Sankha Nupavena Sattha Soti Bhavantu Te. So if you would like to come to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position and gently finish your practice. So let me finish by offering a few reflections on the Buddhist outlook on accumulating wholesomeness, namely on the speed of meritorious outcomes, whether merit is just an ulterior motive, why, if merit is good, are people so reluctant to do it? And lastly, why in Mahāyāna Buddhism it seems that we don't hear quite so much about merit. So to start with, people's confidence in meritorious outcomes of wholesome deeds, words and thoughts is shaken when the outcomes are slow to materialize. That Buddhist lives are not instantly transformed for the better when they cultivate good deeds often adds to their doubts about the reliability of the karmic mechanism. Delays between doing a good deed and receiving a beneficial outcome are accounted for in Buddhist scriptures by the absence of 4 catalytic factors that seem to be more readily available at the time the Buddhist scriptures were compiled. As mentioned in the Vibhanga scripture, the accomplishments or samapatti are 4 factors conducive to the quick ripening of good karma, just like catalysts which facilitate a chemical reaction. Firstly, karmic outcomes tend to be more instantaneous if a person is born into a supportive circumstances, such as an encouraging family who can instill inspiration to cultivate good deeds. So that covers the nurture side of the equation. Secondly, karmic outcomes tend to be more instantaneous if a person is born gifted with outstanding physical characteristics such as voice, appearance, or strength that ensure small wholesome acts give rise to large outcomes. So that covers the nature side of the equation. This also explains why celebrities, even when they do only minor good deeds, but the whole world sits up and takes notice. Thirdly, karmic outcomes tend to be more instantaneous if a person is born in the right place at the right time, specifically the time when the Buddha is around to give teachings in person. This is why some scholars, such as Peter Macefield in his 1986 book Divine Revelation in Pali Buddhism, controversially argues that merit alone cannot pave the way to enlightenment without the presence and teaching of the Buddha. Lastly, karmic outcomes tend to be more instantaneous if a person is born with impeccable earnestness of moral fiber, especially the sort of catalytic discretion of a person who keeps their word. In this connection, I would like to relate to you the scriptural account of a guy called Punna, who plowed a field and it turned into gold. The Dhammapada commentary tells us about a poor plowman who had no money to his name. Everyone else went to a festival in town, but he said he couldn't go because he was living from hand to mouth and had no money to spend on celebrations. So all morning he worked hard, plowing the fields, and as usual his wife would bring 2 portions of food out to him in the fields for his lunch. But that day, as his wife was fetching the food, she met an enlightened disciple of the Buddha along the way. They were not a wealthy family, but she thought to herself, "Some days I meet a monk, but I have nothing to give. Some days I have something to give, but there is no monk to receive my gift. But today, the 2 things have coincided, and I have the chance to give food to this monk." So thinking this, she placed 1 portion of food into the bowl of the monk, and the monk closed the lid of his bowl. However, the woman wasn't done. She protested, "Don't just help me out this lifetime, help me out for future lifetimes as well." Hearing this, the monk opened the lid of his bowl again, and she put in the 2nd portion of food. Consequently, she didn't have anything left for her lunch, and she didn't have anything left for her husband's lunch either. She wasn't sure whether her husband would be very pleased about this, but she took the chance and she went back home again and made lunch all over again for the 2 of them. Meanwhile, Punna, the husband, was getting very hungry, plowing the fields and thinking, "Where is my wife?" Sometime later, the wife turned up in the field and she informed her husband, "I have got some news to tell you. The reason why I'm late is because along the way I met with a disciple of the Buddha, and instead of bringing your food to you immediately, I gave it to this monk instead." Instead of being angry, Punna said, "Sadhu, I rejoice in the merit of the thing which you have done. If it were me, I would have done the same thing." After they ate their lunch, they fell asleep, and sometime later when they woke up, all the furrows which Punna had plowed that morning had turned into solid gold through the power of the generosity of giving the food. When he saw so much gold, he felt quite embarrassed about it, so he called in the king to help remove the gold ingots to somewhere safer. However, the gold had some special characteristics. Every time the soldiers touched the gold and said, "This belongs to the king," it turned back into mud. So it was only when Punna said, "I intend that this gold be given to the king," that it would stay as gold. and it could be loaded onto the king's chariot. Otherwise, it would be gold meant only for his own personal use, because it was the result of the merit which he had done. This is one example of why, if you are born in a time when those of a very high merit, disciples of the Buddha or the Buddha himself, are around to act as a field of merit, those who receive a gift from others, and they yield a much greater merit to the giver and make the fruits of the merit appear immediately after the gift is given. In the present day and age, sometimes we have to use a lot more patience in awaiting our meritorious results, because we have to wait a lot longer to see how the fruits of the merit may come back to us in our lives. A second reflection on merit is the question of whether merit is just an ulterior motive. Some Buddhists may have such a strong conviction in merit that they think that merit and demerit is the only valuable way of understanding their interaction with the world. Similar to the logic of karma, such a narrow view can lead to a myopic view of the world. As with the karma we studied last time, taking merit seriously can inspire a Buddhist to do good deeds, avoid unwholesome deeds, and purify the mind. However, as one of the main characteristics of merit is that it accrues exclusively to the doer of the good deed, it tends to make Buddhists disinterested in what the people around them are doing. They may become interested only in their own personal destiny without trying to upgrade the state of society or show concern for spiritual well-being of those around them or even the environment. Thus, on a social scale, you need to think more widely than just merit and demerit and use criteria such as the 38 blessings of the Khuddaka Nikaya's Mangala Sutta to broaden your definition of merit to encompass wider and broader worldviews as well. A third reflection on merit is to ask why, in many cases, even when people know doing meritorious deeds is good and noble, they are still reluctant to do any good deeds. Even a cursory glance at the world news headlines will confirm that the contemporary era is one where circumstances of society are not very catalytic anymore. Because of the difficulty in discerning the fruits of meritorious action, the majority of people in the world today fail to see the importance of doing meritorious deeds. Even when people see the value of doing good deeds, they may be ignorant of how to accrue it effectively. Even when they know how to do good deeds, they may give it a low priority in their lives. The Buddhist way would be to strive against the tide of apathy in modern society by trying to find the opportunity to practice each of the three major groups of meritorious deeds on a daily basis. The advice of our vice abbot in Thailand, the Venerable Tachiwo, often offered to us, is that when we know that meritorious deeds can have an effect on our lives in a good way, we ought to try to build them into our daily routine. Meritorious deeds such as generosity, keeping the precepts, or meditation, since we already know that habitual karma is stronger than karma on a one-off basis. The Venerable Tachiwo's advice is that any morning when you've not given alms to the monks, and not given food into the bowl of the monks who pass the front of your house or alms round, you shouldn't dare to have your own breakfast. And any day when you haven't intended to keep at least the 5 precepts, you should not dare to leave the house. And any day when you've not done your meditation and chanting, you shouldn't dare to go to bed. If you can integrate all these 3 modes of merit cultivation into your daily schedule, at the very least you won't run the risk of merit in your life running out. As a fourth reflection on merit making, before you say, well, I've studied Buddhism in other schools and they've never mentioned merit, I should qualify today's session by reminding you that not all later schools of Buddhism have such a strong emphasis on merit making as the schools of early Buddhism. Where some schools of Mahāyāna Buddhism have a philosophical position that there is no point in cultivating merit or working on oneself, they focus instead on the advice that a person would be better just to trust in the often future Buddha's grace to ensure salvation, which is similar to the works versus faith debate in Christianity. Furthermore, other later schools focus instead on the idea that you don't need to gradually develop your potential towards enlightenment, but by the tenets of sudden enlightenment, all you have to do is just wake up to the realization that you are already enlightened. In practice, from my observations, the majority of Mahāyāna Buddhists engage in strenuous cultivation of merits. Most Mahāyāna schools prostrate towards the Buddha and chant thousands of times daily in order to cultivate humility, in a way not dissimilar to the second sort of generosity I mentioned earlier. So, before I finish today, let me leave you with a scriptural story from the Siri Jataka that illustrates how ultimately you cannot avoid the merit you deserve, irrespective of contrivances or worldly influences. There was a previous lifetime when the Buddha was born as an ascetic, and he had an elephant trainer as his supporter. It was a lifetime when animals could speak in a way comprehensible to human beings. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, a certain stick gatherer was spending the night at a hermitage and overheard two roosting cocks abusing each other. In the course of the quarrel, one cock boasted that whoever ate its own flesh would become king, whoever ate his skin would become commander-in-chief or his queen, and whoever ate his bones would become either the king's treasurer or his chaplain. The stick corrector wrung the boastful cock's neck and had his wife cook it. Then the stick collector and his wife, preparing for their ascent to royalty, took the chicken casserole with them and went to bathe in the river. They left the cookpot on the riverbank, but as they bathed, the cookpot was blown into the river, and it floated downstream where it was picked up by, you can guess who, the elephant trainer. You remember the supporter of the Buddha-to-be. Knowing this, the ascetic Buddha-to-be visited the elephant trainer at mealtime. There he was offered the meat and divided it, giving the flesh to the elephant trainer, the skin to the elephant trainer's wife, and keeping the bones to himself. 3 days later, the city was besieged by enemies. The king asked the elephant trainer to don royal robes and mount the elephant as a decoy, while he himself fought in the ranks. There the king was killed by an arrow, and the elephant trainer, having won the battle, was made king, his wife becoming queen, and the ascetic his chaplain. The moral of the story is that if a person has done the heavy lifting of storing up merit for themselves, no one, however influential or persistent or sneaky, can steal the favorable outcomes from them. So today we've been looking at ways to accumulate positive karma. The opposite of merit is called demerit and also can be collected up if you're not careful by doing bad things. My next session will deal with this other side of the coin, which means Buddhist strategies to avoid negative karma. We will look especially at what we mean by bad things and how we can avoid them in our everyday life. For today, let me finish up with a quick mention about temple support and a news update about the availability of meditation teaching in English. For those of you who like to visit the temple in Azusa to bring offerings, please be informed that despite moving to a less restrictive tier in California's reopening blueprint, we continue to use the new temple site for offering in the parking lot next to the main temple building between 10 and 11 a.m. each day. If you have trouble with the passcode on the gate or wish to visit at a different time, please call Jenny on 562-716-2961. There will be a monk on standby in PPE to receive the offering and give a short blessing for visitors. English-speaking monks will be on duty on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and a short ceremony for 5 precepts, meditation, and a blessing are given on the weekends starting at 10:45 a.m. Needless to say, the whole temple would like to rejoice in the merits of all continuing to take the opportunity to support the temple in this way. Meditation continues to be valuable in this COVID era to help us cope with social distancing. And in this respect, here at the temple, although there are still no face-to-face teaching sessions for the interim, you can continue to access Dhamma teachings in English at the YouTube channel called Peace Point Meditation or the Facebook page of Peace Point Meditation. For aficionados of Zoom meetings, another way you can access Peace Point content is to join Zoom meeting ID 970-1192-2337, meeting passcode 072, but bear in mind there's no way to pause or replay the media on Zoom for those of you who are trying to take notes. And for those of you who have been following my talks, you may also be interested to subscribe to a YouTube channel which I've set up in my own name, which can be found by searching for Phra Nicholas Thanissaro on YouTube, where I have uploaded more than 100 clips of meditations, Dhamma talks, funeral homages, talks for children, and so forth. Meanwhile, there are a few further changes to the 2021 program from Peace Point. Every Sunday morning, you have now got me with live materials and archive materials on alternating Sundays. Venerable Sopon now appears every Thursday evening. Meanwhile, Peace Breaks from Peace Point are broadcast every Tuesday and Wednesday between 7 and 7:30 p.m. There's a silent meditation, slightly longer for those of you who enjoy that, each Friday between 7 and 8 p.m. For the benefit of families listening in, there's also a special show for children in English known as Shining Stars that goes out at the new time of 6 to 6:30 p.m. every Monday evening with bedtime stories and a meditation short enough to keep the attention of younger listeners. Outside of the live streams and on-demand programming, there's also the newly updated MindGem app, which you can download for free, allowing you to listen to meditation and Dhamma talks in English on your cell phone, even when you are offline. So, this session we have looked at the topic of doing good deeds that does you good. For my next live session online with you, which will, fingers crossed, be a week on Sunday morning, we'll be moving on to look at something along the lines of ways to avoid unwholesome karma. For good measure, I would like to remind viewers, even better than posting thank you or great talk or thatu in the broadcast comments, you can email your questions about meditation or what you have heard in the lecture to the email address as you can see spelled out on the slide. And I'll do my best to answer these on my next session. In the meantime, try to stay healthy, avoid recklessness or complacency in the face of the virus, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Hopefully, as a result of today's session, you will now have a clear understanding of ways to cultivate positive karma in your life, to collect up merits for yourself. And next time round, we will see the other side of this equation in terms of avoiding the unwholesome aspects of life. So today, this is me, Phra Nicholas, signing off for this session. So long, folks, and stay safe.